The roll call for the September 27th regular council meeting of the City of South Fulton. The Honorable Catherine F. Rao, District 1.
Present.
The Honorable Carmelita Gums, District 2.
Present.
The Honorable Helen Z. Willis, District 3.
Present.
The Honorable J.C. Sebastian, District 4. The Honorable Corey A. Reeves, District 5.
Council 4.
And the Honorable Natasha Williams, District 6.
Present.
Mayor Khalid is not present at this time. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. And we would like to bring the invocation.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, the person that was scheduled to bring our invocation this morning, Chaplain Chambers, has not made it yet. My understanding, they should be here about 4:10.
All right. Did that raise your hand? Did you want to bring the invocation?
Yes, Reverend Turner.
Okay, Reverend Turner, would you please step up to the mic and bring the invocation, sir?
Let us pray. God, we come this evening to handle the business of this city. We pray your blessings upon these individuals, these elected officials, that they will govern according to your will and your way. Let all be done that you might receive the glory due your name. In the name of our Savior we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Reverend Turner, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I ain't done that since I was a child. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Turner, for your service. Roll call.
Yes, we've already established a roll call. Mayor Pro Tem, we are now at the adoption of the council agenda.
All right. I motion, and I entertain a motion to adopt the council agenda.
I move that we adopt the council agenda.
Second.
Properly moved in second. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Rao?
Yes.
Councilmember Gums?
Yes.
Councilmember Willis?
Yes.
Councilmember Sebastian?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves?
Aye.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
That motion was approved unanimously.
All right. Second item.
Next item is Roman numeral 6. It's approval of city council meeting minutes. It's the regular meeting minutes from August 23rd, 2022, the work session minutes from September 13th, 2022, the alcohol zoning public hearing minutes from September 13th, 2022, special call meeting minutes for the millage rate hearings, August 24th, August 31st, August 31st again, 2022, and the special call meeting minutes for the FY23 budget hearings, September 13th and September 21st.
I move that we accept the meeting minutes as stated.
Second. Second.
Properly moved in second. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Rao?
Yes.
Councilmember Gums?
Yes.
Councilmember Willis?
Yes.
Councilmember Sebastian?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves?
Aye.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
That item was approved unanimously.
Next item.
Next item is proclamation presentations. We have two this afternoon. The first will be a presentation to City of South Fulton Police Major Tina Johnson.
I told Ms. Johnson, Major Johnson, this is going to be emotional for all of us because you've been with this area for a very long time, and we're really going to miss you. We want to thank you for your service, and I'm glad you made it out with your health, your strength, and you have a lot of youth in you to do something else. So a lot of times law enforcement officers don't have their health when they retire. So today we're here to honor you And the proclamation reads, Major Tina Johnson joined the City of South Fulton Department on March 26, 2018, after serving 24 years with the Fulton County Police Department. Major Johnson was among the first law enforcement personnel hired to form the new city police department. And whereas Major Johnson holds a master's degree in public safety administration from Columbus State University in Georgia, a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Seton Hall University in New Jersey, and a host of Georgia Peace Officers and Training Council certifications in management, supervision, and senior instructor. Additionally, she is a graduate of the Mercer University Public Safety Leadership Institute and of the Georgia Law Enforcement Command College and several law enforcement professional organizations, including International Association of Chiefs of Police, Georgia Association of Chiefs of Police, the FBI, Law Enforcement Executive Development Association, and the Georgia Record Association.
Whereas Major Johnson began her career with the Fulton County Police Department, working her way up the ranks from patrol officer to police captain, some of the various roles Major Johnson held while with the Fulton County Police Department were as follows: Police Academy Director, Training Division Commander, Assistant Police Academy Director, Watch Commander in the Patrol Division, and as a Lieutenant in the Internal Affairs Unit, Detective Unit, and Patrol Divisions. And whereas Major Johnson has continued her exemplary service as a member of the City of South Fulton Police Department and has served as the commander over the Criminal Investigations Division, overseeing detectives, investigators, alcohol licensing, procurement, evidence, property, records, and crime scene units. Under her leadership, the Criminal Investigations Division maintained a 90% or better homicide clearance rate 2 years in a row. While in her role over criminal investigations, she was awarded 2021 Division Commander of the Year by Chief Keith Meadows.
Whereas Major Johnson currently serves as the commander of the Office of Personnel Professional Standards, OPS, where she manages internal affairs, background and recruitment, training, information technology, grants, fleet and special projects. She also serves as a project manager over the development of the new proposed police headquarters. And whereas the City of South Fulton is honored to commemorate the retirement of Major Johnson on September the 16th, 2022, and expresses extreme gratitude to her and her family, including Police Major Gary T. Johnson and son Gary Ross.
Now there it be resolved, the mayor and the city council of the City of South Fulton congratulates Major Johnson for her many years of service, commitment to the citizens, and her demonstration of excellence in policing, and does hereby proclaim Tuesday, September 27, 22, as Major Tina Johnson Appreciation Day here in the City of South Fulton.
You know, when I first came over as the chief of police in South Fulton, it didn't take long before I realized who was all going to be on my team. And Tina was always front and center. Whenever I needed anything done, she was always willing to step forward and take hold of the initiative. You know, I empower my commanders to tell me no. And the reason that I do that is because every decision can't start and stop with Keith Meadows. It has to be a collective voice, and that's just not among the law enforcement officers inside of the organization, but that holds true for our elected officials and our citizens as well. And so, Tina, everything that you've done since I've been here, it's greatly appreciated by me. We didn't always see eye to eye, and she took advantage of telling me no quite often, but at the end of the day, we were able to get a lot accomplished, and we get accolades for how much this police department has accomplished in such a short period of time, and certainly your work is at the center of that. Thank you for everything you've done, Tina.
Major Johnson, I just want to say, on behalf of the city, thank you for your service. I understand that you are moving on to bigger and better things, but staying in our city. So thank you for all you do.
when I saw the light, I knew it was right.
I just want to say thank you to the mayor and council for acknowledging my work here in City of South Fulton, and thank you for this honor. I'm not going to cry.
Take a picture.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you will notice there is another proclamation on the minutes for Mr. Troy Blackman. We, though you're not here with us today, if you're watching online, you or your loved ones, we do want to thank you as well for your incredible service to our city. Mr. Clerk, will you sound the next item?
Mr. Mayor and members of council, we are at Roman numeral 8, public comments. Members of the general public wishing to make public comments at a City of South Fulton City Council meeting must be residents of the City of South Fulton, except for county, state, federal elected officials, shall be allowed to speak regardless of city of residence. Comments should be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. A bell will signal the end of each speaker's time. In consideration of other persons who are registered to speak, speakers shall conclude their comments promptly upon the bell sounding. Public comments should be limited to only those items appearing on the current City Council meeting agenda. Comments on issues, topics not appearing on the current City Council meeting agenda should not be allowed. Each speaker must complete and submit a request to speak form in its entirety prior to the beginning of the meeting. The person desiring to speak should rise, address the City Council, and when recognized, state their name, address, the agenda item that they are addressing, and the City Council district in which they reside. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole and not to any member. Speakers may not employ obscenities or threats of violence in their comments. Speakers may not use public comments to campaign for political office, either for themselves or on behalf of other candidates, for the purpose of limiting political influence on city employees and encouraging orderly and efficient meetings. With those instructions, Mr. Mayor and Council, we do have a number of persons who have signed up. As I call your name, please approach the middle microphone and state your name, address, the item you will be discussing, and you will be allotted 2 minutes. The first speaker is I am Edlin, Kelvin Turner, Naima Gilliard, and Drew Demand. Those 4, would you please come at that time? Yes. I'm sorry, this is in the order in which they were given to me.
Are you gonna let people disrupt our meeting?
Can you adjust the mic for?
They're not supposed to be disrupting our meeting.
Start over too.
Yeah.
It's better. Can you hear me now? Okay. So, hello, my name is Ivy Evelyn, and I'm a parent of the swimmer of a swordfish swim team. And I'm inquiring about our one and only South Fulton pool located at Welcome Recreation Center.
We were told that our pool and via the City of South Fulton website where your money goes, the roof renovation should be complete by now or by the end of October. But there have been no updates or work on the roof for months.
I'm sorry, just a point of information. While I do think this is very important, and it is ironic because we are sitting here where the pool is, City Council has passed an agenda that doesn't allow people to speak about anything that is not on the agenda. So as the pool is not on the agenda, you have been barred by this council from speaking about it. You can only speak about the items on the published agenda. I apologize profusely.
Oh, wow. Okay, because I just rushed over here from picking up a swimmer, now we got to rush the swim property.
But I will say our Ms. Dixon with my office is here and the city manager is here, so if you have those comments written out, we would love to hear them. If you can get with either, Ms. Dixon, are you in the room? Yes. Oh no, that's Ms. Slayton Dixon. Right here on the back table, she's also sitting with our assistant city manager. If you would just take those comments to them, we will definitely address them. And again, my apologies.
So the next speakers in order, please state your name and the item that you will be, that's on the agenda that you will be discussing. Kelvin Turner, Naima Gilliard, Drew DeMann, Jewel Johnson, and Kenneth Joe.
Good evening, Kelvin Turner, 7495 Hall Road, Fairburn, 30213. Item number 24, the rezoning of 7500 Hall Road, which sits directly across the street from my wife and my home. We're adamantly opposed to the rezoning of this piece of property, my neighbor's property, for several reasons. One, it impacts our property value and our quality of life and the quality of life in the entire neighborhood. As you've heard several times, there's a cell phone tower on the property, and the developer is proposing to put up a barrier fence. But unless you're going to put a fence 160 feet circumference around the cell tower, probably does no good. I'll pick that up. There's a notice on that cell tower. It says, beyond this point, radio frequency fields at this site may exceed FCC rules, thank you, for human exposure. And so if we're talking about building a subdivision with 75 homes and people with children, I doubt very seriously if you're going to be able to keep children from playing in an area that could be dangerous to their health. Secondly, there's a play on words. He who controls the language controls the situation. It says that there's supposed to be 1.9 or 2 to 3 houses per acre. I understand that there are 39 acres, and in the developer's proposal, they're proposing to develop 17 of the acres. I just left a grocery store, and the salmon was $8.99 per pound. That meant if I got a pound, I paid $8.99. There was no question about that. I don't think we need to play with words and say, because we have 39 acres, we can shove 75 houses on 17 of those acres and thereby still meet the requirement of 1.9 or 2 to 3 houses per acre. If it says 2 to 3 houses per acre, then it needs to be per acre, taking into account the houses that's going to be on each one of those acres. Right now, they are developing to propose 0.16 lots of 7,000 square feet, which would be 0.16 of an acre, thereby putting 45 houses on 1 acre, which affects our value. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Next speaker is Naima Gilliard, Drew DeMann, and Jewel Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item is Hall Road, of course, Z22010. Council and Mayor, would you live in a subdivision with a cell tower that needs an easement so trucks can come between the homes to get to it, with no amenities other than a trail for families, no sidewalks for kids to walk to school, Only 1/3 of the street is paved. A warehouse on the corner with grounds that look like a ghetto. It is really to introduce density in a rural area, and more density will follow after this. The Planning Commission said no, the staff said yes, and did not mention people being impacted. They only mentioned the buffer. 253 people signed the petition for no. Your job, council, is to protect us, our quality of life from cell towers, and what we do not want. Zoning and land use needs to change for our quality of life with meaningful input, and it doesn't need to be urbanized, which is what is being pushed. Number 2, reapportionment. Math for redesigning the districts to make some larger and some smaller doesn't work. So I'm going to send you my justification for why it appears to be a land grab. Math always works because 1 and 1 always comes out to be 2. And the last item, I am curious about adding Fulton Industrial to the URA budget, which means something is going to be reduced because there's no more additional money. Their budget is in the county and they are being supplemented. So what are we really doing? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Drew Demand, Jewel Johnson, and Kenneth Cho.
Good evening, greetings, Mayor and Council. The proposed development on Hall Road must not be approved. The density of the proposed development does not actually fit on the buildable area of the parcel. There are about 15 acres of buildable land on the site. That means that 77 proposed homes will be on about quarter-acre lots. The current designation of R1, R2, I can't remember which it is, actually stipulates 1 house per acre. And I'm basing this off of conversations I've had with people in the surrounding area. To rezone the CUP feels like a disingenuous attempt to create flexibility for a development that doesn't really fit in the land use plan, which, although current and is our guidepost, I think is flawed. The fact of the matter is, without destroying sensitive wetland habitat, the site is not buildable as such. They're along Line Creek, I think it is. This will leave no room for amenities, and furthermore, this neighborhood would be situated below a cell tower, as we know. The district residents have vocally and roundly opposed it, and their will should be respected. Furthermore, the Planning Commission did not approve the project, and we should respect that as well. I think we really need to focus on developing land use policy that matches the needs and desires of residents and takes into account what we have here, which is a wealth of green space area, much agricultural land. Earlier today, I was at an event at Chat Hills Charter School where representatives from the EPA and the Natural Resources Conservation Service unveiled this $45 million grant for Fulton County to pursue agricultural stuff in Fulton County. And we have so much ag land here, I believe we really must safeguard it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Demand.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, council, citizens. I want to talk this evening about number 10 under the City Council and City Administration. The last time I spoke before you all, I specifically shared with you the fact that we, meaning the citizens of South Fulton, was not in approval of you doing an internal audit. That was not what it was supposed to be. We come back, and you come back again without the will of the people, doing what you want to do. We cannot continue down this road. As I said before, we have no kings, We have no queens. You are merely a representative and an employee of the people. And I'd like very much for you to get back on that. We were supposed to have an we were supposed to have an audit of the departments, not some that one or two council people picked out and said, I want this to be done. So now we're at the point, and I'm raising my voice because I'm beginning to get agitated, because you're not listening. The last time I was here, I made it very clear that you need to listen to us. In closing, I'd like to say I am saddened. I am so saddened that we have people that are so vain they won't listen to the people. That's all I have to say. Other than some of you need to resign. All of you should resign.
Good evening. Kenneth Joe, District 2. Speaking on item 16, request council approval for the implementation of the South Fulton Police Department Incentive Pay Plan, effective October 1st. I'm speaking today because I don't think it's the right time for us to do that based upon the report that has come out from the Smyrna Police Department. I have no faith as a citizen in our chief of police. When we have a chief of police who decides to not prosecute an employee who has broken the law, forget all the items of officers not liking her or thinking she's a bully. Those are HR matters. But mishandling forfeiture funds is against the law. If I break that law, I go to jail. So we have the highest police officer in our city who is choosing not to follow the law. That's unacceptable. I'm calling for Chief Meadows' removal immediately. I trust him not to be handling any money of the city. I request that the executive session minutes be reviewed by the Attorney General's office, which I will request myself, to determine if the council knowingly disregarded information that directly implicated Chief Meadows in choosing to not press charges on an employee who misused forfeiture funds acquired by the police department. 2, a financial forensic audit be commenced for the city of South Fulton and the police department by the Attorney General's office. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and Council, we have 2 citizens who wish to speak via Zoom. You won't be able to hear it, well, you see it because they're working on the middle screen, but you should get audio. The first speaker is Mr. Patrick Ewing. Mr. Ewing, can you unmute and make your comment? You'll have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you, Clerk, Council, and Mayor. My name is Patrick Ewing. I live in District 4 on Hall Road. I'm here this afternoon to provide feedback on the agenda item number 24, the proposed rezoning of 7500 Hall Road. Quick reminder for everyone, I spoke at the last public hearing in opposition to this proposal, where I brought forward concerns about the development being incompatible with the existing neighborhood and the project not being appropriate when viewed in context to the definition of a rural neighborhood land use district. This afternoon, my new points focus on density, but in context to public safety. In planning and zoning, staff recommendation only states that this area is served by South Fulton Police and Fire. What the report does not tell you is that the project is in a very rural setting with rural emergency services. For example, we don't have fire hydrants where the project is located beyond the high school and Hall Road. And our fire apparatuses like trucks and tankers only have about 4 to 5 minutes of water before a tender needs to run down the road to the nearest hydrant and refill. This is not a complaint, by the way, against our chief. I'm very impressed with the leaps forward his department has made in investing in equipment to serve rural settings like Hall Road. But think you agree that a larger fire that spreads into our area will create challenges that could quickly exceed our department's capability to effectively respond to that type of fire. This is why I'm here again talking about proposed density with home sites as small as 7,000 square feet, between 1/8 of an acre and 1/4. The spacing between homes isn't a lot, no pun intended, like 20 to 30 feet between each house on the small of the lot. Given a limited spacing, it's not uncommon for one house to catch fire and then have that fire spread to other adjacent homes. If multiple homes in this neighborhood were to catch fire near the wooded areas adjacent to my property and others, I don't find it unreasonable to believe it could spread and jeopardize crops in existing homes, including my own where I live with my wife and 2-year-old son. Another public safety concern with small lots is the result of limited parking. Small lots don't have a lot of space for guest parking, so guest vehicles logically overflow into the street. Given the need for guest street parking, you've now created obstacles that could entirely prevent a large vehicle like a fire truck from being able to respond to a fire further down the street. In summary, I feel staff erred in recommending a development of such high intensity when the rural neighborhood plan land use specifies appropriate development will maintain rural character and scale and design, and given the public safety concerns created by such high density. Please deny this request and any similar future requests that clearly sidestep the land use plans we all work on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ewing. The last speaker is Myrtle Bolden. Ms. Bolden, would you please unmute, and you have 2 minutes. Please state your name and address.
Thank you. My name is Myrtle Bolden. I reside in District 1 at 2175 Enum Mill Drive. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I would like to encourage the City Council to vote favorably regarding item number 31 on the agenda, supporting the installation of speed cushions on the Enum Fines Drive in our neighborhood. I would also like to thank our councilwoman, Raul, and the Public Works Department for all of their assistance and guidance as we acquire the necessary signatures for this approval. This will be a welcome conclusion of a journey that started a year ago. Thank you in advance for your support.
Thank you, Ms. Bolden. I just want to let the public know that all other public comments that were submitted in written format have been forwarded to the Mayor and City Council for their review. That concludes the public comment for tonight's meeting.
Before we move on, I would like to take a moment of personal privilege to address the council and request respectfully that we reconsider, not tonight, but that we have some discussions and maybe reconsider how we have limited public comment to the items that are on the agenda. We took 2 months off this year, and we will likely take off December. So that leaves us 9 times this year where we are all gathered together with our city manager and all of our city staff, where we can actually hear in person from our constituents. And I don't believe that these meetings are just our meetings. I believe that they are also the people's. And in the collective wisdom of this body, we may still be missing at any given moment in time an issue that is pressing for our constituents. So I do understand the reason that the rules were put in place, but hearing that conversation, you know, about the pool, it just made me wonder what other things might constituents want to talk with us about while we're all gathered together, because only 9 times this year are we allowed legally to be gathered as a quorum with all of our staff present. We do have town halls, and there are other ways for people to talk to individual council people, but again, there are only 9 times that we as a council, a staff, and as a community will gather in person this year. And I think whatever the citizens want to talk about, whatever issues they think are pressing, I hope that we would just find a way to hear them when we're all gathered together. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, please sound the next item.
Are you using the queue?
Oh, you're in the queue. I'm sorry, go ahead. My computer is still not working as the television screen here. Councilwoman Rowell.
I also would like to take a point of privilege, and Mayor, as you know, our efforts have been focused on becoming more efficient. In any council meeting, we have a minimum of 500 pages, sometimes 900 pages of content. And I can tell you, taking calls from constituents on a daily basis, it is challenging to stay focused on the matters before us. And I say that because oftentimes we're getting calls about projects that have not even come before us. So I urge you to think about the volume of information we have to process and deal with at any given point. It's not to silence the people, because I think we all are, at least we all have open door policies, but it's to help us be more efficient.
Thank you, Dr. Rowell.
I'm in the queue.
Councilwoman Willis.
So in agreeing to that policy, there are 538 cities in the state of Georgia. And in looking at the best practices around the state of Georgia and even in the nation, that is the policy of a lot of cities, and that is to leave public comments that are related to items on the agenda. For me, I do have an open door policy. I'm accessible to residents via email, via phone call, and if they need to speak with me, I'm always here. I'm pretty responsive, and I just will hope that residents don't wait to a regular council meeting to express their concerns and their desires when we are readily accessible to them at any time. I can deal with your concerns more efficiently when I'm not at a council meeting and get the city manager and the staff involved to handle the specific concerns. So thank you. When we come to these council meetings, it's basically formality for us to vote on items that have already been considered, vetted, and taken up by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Willis. Anyone else? I'm just going to ask until, well, thank you. Now we have at least this queue up. Okay. All right, go ahead and sound the next item, Mr. Clerk.
Next item is Roman numeral 9, consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda.
I move to accept the consent agenda item.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, let's do a show of hands. All right, that passes.
Record that as unanimous.
Please sound the next item.
Next item is agenda items part 1 under the title City Council and City Administration. The first item is the first read of an ordinance amending the City Council District maps due to reapportionment as a result of the 2020 census.
All right, this is just a first read for those of you all that are here. Currently, we have printed 3 large format maps when we're on our intermission. You can take a look at them, and for those of you all who are watching online or replaying this later, after this meeting, those maps one will remain here in Welcome Hall, one will be at Burdette Park, and one will be in our City Hall lobby. So any residents that would like to see the changes that are being proposed, you can come and see them in person before we vote on this at the October 27th meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sounds right.
All right, any other comments? All right, hearing none.
I try to get in the queue, Mr. Mayor. I don't know what happened.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Sebastian.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, for recognizing me. I would like to request that we print more of these maps and put them in different overall city buildings where they can be easier access, not just in 3 locations. For instance, Southwest Arts Center is pretty far removed from City Hall and other areas, and so is City Grove. I would like the opportunity to have some of those maps displayed all around our city, not just 3 locations. That's my request.
All right, thank you. I do want to thank Madam City Manager for paying for those, for the 3 that we got today. We did get them, thank you, from the West End Print Shop. And so they are a registered vendor with the city, and any member of council can get those printed. I actually got it originally from Mr. Reeves. I'm sure that Madam City Manager will get them in city buildings, but I do just want to let you all know that you all can get as many maps as you would like printed for all of our residents.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, sorry to jump back in. Is that a no? Because if it's a city thing, it should be a city.
No, it's not a no. I'm just saying it. I'm just saying that.
So Madam City Manager will make that happen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
And I'll let you know where I think ours should be
I was
placed.
just going to say, pardon me, Mayor, if you can just let me know how many you are requesting, we can have those printed.
Thank you, Madam City Manager.
All right, Mr. Clerk, please sound the next item.
Next item is item 10, second read and request council approval of the ordinance to amend Article 9, Article 4, Administrative Affairs of the City of South Fulton Charter to add Section 4.16, Internal Auditor, and for other lawful purposes. And this is a resolution sponsored by Councilmember Williams.
Councilwoman Williams.
Is it on? It's on? Okay, yes. Thank you, Mayor. I believe that we have been through this, I think, fairly thoroughly during the first read, and so at this time, I will just simply move for the acceptance of this ordinance.
It's been properly moved in second. I'm just going to ask for hands. I don't know if is anyone else having trouble getting into the queue?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just going to ask for a show of hands. Was your hand up, Mr. Reeves? Did I see someone's hand up for discussion? All right. I did have questions for Madam City Manager and our Finance Director. Are these your recommendations as staff to create this position?
Yes.
All right.
That was me.
And Madam, may I ask the Chief Financial Officer, what is the financial impact? What is the amount for salary and fringe and office supplies that will be needed for this position and support staff?
Mayor and Council, I want to say that the FIS that was provided, we said it would cost in excess of about $200,000+ to fund this particular department. And I must state that we didn't put it in the FY23 budget, so we will need to amend that budget to include this new department.
All right, and will you be pulling that from reserves?
Yes, we will have to.
All right. Thank you. With that,
I have a question, Mayor.
Oh, go ahead, Councilwoman Willis.
I appreciate you recognizing me. Ms. Sally Jones, when we approved the budget, I thought we put this in the budget.
We have the grants department and the external affairs department that was put in the budget.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right, and seeing no further hands, would you?
Yeah, you said.
I'm sorry. Dr. Rob, go ahead.
City Manager Jones, can you speak to internal auditors? Because, again, this is not uncommon, particularly of a city of our size. For the benefit of the public, can you speak to that?
Right, and let me make sure I clarify. We put $150,000 in the city manager's budget to contract for an internal auditor. Pardon me. There is no position or a department. So I want to make sure that that's clear. But yes, this is not uncommon. Cities and counties have internal audit positions, and because of some of the things that have gone on in our city the last couple of years, I do think it is in the best interest of the city that we contract out for an internal auditor for our city.
If this is, so it's going to be, oh, and so this is out of your city manager's office, the way it's going to be structured. So
That's right.
as you see the need to look at any department or anything that's going on, you had a latitude you need.
Right, and we just, reached out to some auditing firms and just said, hey, this is something we are interested in. What is normally the going contracted rate? And that's where we got the $150,000 estimate from.
Okay, thank you. I think this is really important as you have come in and identified things that we need to improve upon since you've been here. I think it's really important for the public to know. I appreciate the fact that things might need a deeper dive, that you've gone and done the deeper dive. So I want to thank you for that.
Okay, you're welcome.
Councilwoman Willis.
So in working through the legislative process, the legislation does call for this person not to be in the city manager's office because we want to have total autonomy. We don't want the internal auditor to feel that we wanted to have total independence. And it will report to, where's the, did we change it? Where is it reporting? Yes. Right, but we have, can you speak to your legislation, Councilmember Williams? No, we changed it. Or Attorney Vernay? How we have the internal auditor set up? I just want to make sure before we.
So the ordinance says in section 1, clause H, section 1, clause H, item 1, the director shall report to the council all findings and reports upon the completion of assignments. Then there's quarterly summary to city council, report of activities, and quarterly report to the public.
So I guess the question would be, where on the org chart does the internal auditor sit, and whom do they report to?
The internal auditor is supposed to be similar to the attorney, where they are independent, reporting to the council.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Councilwoman? Yes. All right.
That's how we have it.
Go ahead.
Attorney Vernay, is that how we have it worded? Is that how it was changed, or not changed, but worded? It's an appointment. Can you explain? Because you're the attorney that helped us with this letter.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, the structure is for the appointment, similar to the city attorney, appointment made by the mayor and approval by council, and the reporting structure would be directly to council. However, being an independent body, the auditor is accountable to the citizens to ensure that funds are properly handled within the city and departments are running as they should.
And then didn't we also, wasn't a criteria also added for an executive search firm to help us determine who this person would be?
Correct. In the selection process, an executive search firm will narrow down 3 candidates, and that is the pool that would be selected by the mayor for approval by council.
Now, Mrs. Sala Jones, is there a preference over contractor versus this, the way that we have it set up with the current ordinance? Because it appears it's some kind of discrepancy.
Well, my preference would be that it be contracted.
Well, I think so.
That's my preference.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. Are you?
I yield. Thank you.
All right. I see you, Councilman Sebastian. Councilwoman Rowell.
I think seems like we all know we need an internal auditor. I think the structure is unclear. I like the idea that they're autonomous from us in terms of contract as opposed to being an employee of the city. That way they're not tied to anybody. They just investigate whatever needs to be investigated. Councilwoman Williams, do you have a discrepancy?
I've been very clear that I wanted the position to be a permanent position for a city of this size with the budget that we have, given some of the issues that have arisen. I have not changed my position.
Councilman Sebastian.
Honorable City Manager, you expressed that you prefer a contract position. Can you explain why the preference, please?
Well, very similar to what Councilmember Rao said. The person would come in, not being loyal to any particular person or individual. They would come in, they would contract, they would do the work, and, report to the public. If for some reason there is an issue, we have to terminate the contract with that particular auditor and get someone else, it's easier to do that than to hire somebody and then, try to part ways if necessary.
We could say that about any position, any leadership position in the city.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So that's why I'm not sure about the whole loyalty thing. We could say that to different directors.
Well,
within
I'm
the
sharing
city. So
with you what some of my concerns are in that type of position, because there's some very sensitive type work that has to be done when it comes to an internal auditor. That person may even be auditing the city manager's office. That person may audit a council budget. That person may have to audit the finance department, police, fire. I just think that it would help if it was somebody that wasn't actually an employee.
honestly, personally, none of that concerns me. We're public officials. We're supposed to be able to turn over all the leaves, and anyone who's coming in, if we do a good job of screening them and let them know what their position is and how sensitive their job is, if we do a good job of selecting the right person, I don't think that should be a problem at all. So, I mean, we could, again, we could say that about several different positions in the city. So, I personally, and I just happened to do a finance class at GMA last week, right? And so, personally, I think for the size city that we have and all these different departments and all these different council budgets and all this kind of stuff, it's very difficult for me to see we're going to use a contractor not having someone report into us every single day to do this work. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Councilwoman Williams.
I'm good.
All right. Attorney Burnett.
I just want to make a point of clarification. In the legislation, it does say that the position of the internal auditor would be independent, not loyal to any member of council. And actually, to remove that person, you have to go through a process of removal so that not one council member has influence over that person. If it is a contractor, I want us to think about perhaps being able to change contractor because the contractor does not come back with the result that we may want versus someone who is independent and their job is to make sure that things are being done accordingly and their job is secure and they cannot be removed without just cause for finding something out that perhaps a particular official may not like.
Councilwoman Williams.
Yes, thank you. I changed my mind. Because if we are going to have a conversation about directors and employees being loyal to people, we should have that conversation about existing people and existing positions and not positions that have yet to be filled.
All right. Thank you. I do share a bit of the city manager's concerns that about the independence of someone who would essentially be hired and could be fired and reports to council. That's my concern. But I would like to talk about this fiscal impact statement and the executive search firm. I'm assuming, Ms. Slayton-Dixon, that the $200,000 for the position and the support staff and the office supplies and all of that goes for the internal auditor would not cover the search firm. What might we expect the cost of the search firm to be? Because we would then need to include that in our budget amendment as well.
And we haven't gone that far to get that dollar amount, so I'm not sure if the city manager would have a figure on that.
Just from past experience using search firms for director positions, it could probably be as low as 20,000 or maybe as high as 50.
All right, we should just build that. I think we're going to take the vote now, and we should just make sure that we build that in the budget, whichever way the vote goes. All right, Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
Yes, we have a motion by Councilmember Willis, seconded by Councilmember Gumbs, to approve item 10.
Motion by Councilmember Williams.
Willis, I'm sorry, I said Williams.
You said Willis.
Willis, I'm sorry, Williams. Seconded by Councilmember Gumbs. Roll call vote, Councilmember Rao.
Can you come back? I'm not clear. Can you proceed? I just need to look at this a little bit longer. Go down the road.
Councilmember Gumbs.
Yes.
Councilmember Willis.
Yes.
Councilmember Sebastian.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
Councilmember Rao.
I'm gonna go with it.
That item was approved unanimously.
All right, Mr. Clerk, please sound the next item.
Next item, item 11, actually has a substitute piece of legislation that was included in your folders this afternoon, as well as sent to the mayor and council last night, as well as added to the website last night. This is an ordinance for second read by the City of South Fulton, creating the Department of Public Affairs and Special Projects, establishing the positions of Director of Public Affairs and Special Projects Manager within the department, providing the job summary and principal duties and responsibilities of the Director of Public Affairs and for other lawful purposes. This is sponsored by Council Members Williams and Willis.
So move.
Well, I'm sorry,
Second.
I haven't entertained a motion yet, but if you all have nothing to say, then I will entertain a motion now. I think it's been motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? All right. I'm looking for hands. Let me, just give me 1 second here. I do want to, I don't want to miss people. I know that we have discussions. We've talked about this Wi-Fi. I really want to be able to use our technology. And so if people can get in the queue, I'm just going to ask them to get in the queue. And if you can't, we'll recognize them that way. So I'm going to start the way that I did with my discussion before. Madam City Manager, and I guess this would be our Communications Director. Are these your do you recommend the creation of these as staff?
Mayor, you asked me about this one last month, and we had put a communications manager in the city clerk's budget. And so I would say my position hasn't changed regarding this particular legislation.
And I just want to be clear, because I think there are two here. There's a public, so you don't recommend item 11, but you do recommend item 12?
Mayor, there is no longer the press secretary. We had all those conversations since the first read, and that has been taken off the table because of the position that was put in the city clerk's office.
All right, so item 12 is stricken from the agenda?
No, actually, they're two different, and I'll let Ms. Vernay speak to them, but the first item that I just read actually creates, the Director of Public Affairs creates that position. The second item is an amendment to an ordinance regarding departments of the city, and in that ordinance, it adds the Department of Public Affairs and modifies the description of the Department of Communications. So there are two separate pieces of legislation, and I'll let Ms. Vernay add to whatever I just said.
I think you've summarized that properly. Are there any other questions for me?
I would like to ask, both of these deal with because both of these are dealing with communications. We have public affairs, we have external affairs, and then we'll still have a communications department. I guess I'm just...
External affairs, the title's been changed to public affairs.
Okay, so we have 2 public affairs officers and a separate communications department?
No, we don't.
So item 11 and item 12 are the same department. I guess what I'm looking for, what would be helpful is were these items all to pass, what does our org chart look like? Do we have I'm just trying to visualize how these things all look on the org chart. Do we have any visual that could be provided about who reports to whom, what's in what department?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I clarify something for you?
Yes.
It is 2 pieces of legislation, but it relates to the same thing. There are different parts of the code that need to be fixed.
Okay.
So it's relating to one position of the Director of Public Affairs and Special Projects. However, I had to make the change in the code where it mentions the Department of Communication and External Affairs that was modified.
Okay, I got it. So there's one person, 2 pieces of legislation just need to be done for this one person. This person will report to the city clerk? The city manager.
Office. Correct. And the original legislation had a few other positions, one being the press secretary. That was removed and revised based on comments from last meeting.
Okay, so this will create, and I'm just again trying to create a picture, and I would just ask, I think it's helpful when we create departments and positions, if in the legislation it is not required, I cannot by fiat make a requirement, but I do think it would be helpful to, when we're creating these positions, to show where they sit on the org chart so that it's clear. I'm a visual learner. This person would report to the city manager, and then there would still be a communications director that would also report to the city manager.
No, I believe that position was presented by the city manager as being under the clerk's office. Oh, so the current position still does report to the city manager, yes.
Who does this new position report to?
The city manager as well.
Okay. And this is in our budget, Ms. Dixon? All right, and I'm sorry, I don't see the FIS.
The external affairs is in our fiscal year 23 budget.
Okay, and that is the budget for this position and all of its support is, what is that total?
I don't have that exact amount, but the total for that particular budget was projected to be about $300,000 for FY '23.
You said 3 or 400?
300.
300,000.
Yes.
All right. Those are my questions. Seeing none other, let me check our queue. Dr. Rao, are you in the queue?
Since I'm in it, I move that.
But we already have a motion second.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll call for a vote.
All right, yes, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Roll call vote, please, Mr. Clerk.
We have a motion by Councilmember Willis, seconded by Councilmember Williams to approve. Roll call. Councilmember Rao.
Yes.
Councilmember Gums. Councilmember Willis. Councilmember Sebastian.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
That item was approved as amended.
All right, please sound the next item.
Next item is also substitute legislation that was forwarded in your package. This is an ordinance for second read to amend section 16009, titled Departments Generally, for the purpose of modifying the title and responsibilities of the Department of Communications and External Affairs, adding the Department of Public Affairs and Special Projects, and for other lawful purposes.
All right, before, I'm sorry, and I'm not sorry, this is who I am. It appears that from the first meeting, from last month's meeting, these positions have changed substantially. What their title is, who they report to. How are we on a second read?
If I
And I'm going to ask our legal department, how can we have a second read for legislation that we're seeing the first time this month? And actually today, because we were getting these supplemental materials today.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure that the reporting structure changed. Can you clarify for me what changed that you noticed from the first one to the next one that you're referring to?
Well, last month there were actually two different positions. I think one was one was reporting to the clerk. I definitely remember that. And then there was a second one. We've heard from the author of the legislation that the name has changed. So I guess as a matter of, let me ask it separate from this, just as a legal fact pattern. How much can an ordinance be amended between the first read and a second read, and it still constitute as a second read?
Ordinances are not adopted until the second read, so changes can be made up until that second read with proper notice to the public. Sometimes things are walked on for those changes. So you could even amend it today as you're passing it and say you'd like to add X, Y, Z. So up until the time of adoption, technically it could be amended if you wanted to take out something or add something.
Is there a point at which changes to an ordinance are so significant as to constitute resetting the clock for the read?
Not to my knowledge, but things were removed rather than necessarily added. So press secretary was removed, public affairs manager was removed. So things were more removed than added into the revised ordinance based on conversation from last meeting.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is, so we now have what is the person called? External affairs person?
Yeah, that was always the name, Director of Public Affairs.
Director of Public Affairs. We have a Director of Public Affairs and we have a Communications Department. Who does what? What does the Communications Department no longer do that the Director of Public Affairs does, or what new things, maybe it's not that you're taking anything away, what new things are the Director of Public Affairs doing that our communications department did not do? And I think that it's helpful to flesh this all out while we're all here so that we all have the same understanding and our staff all has the same understanding. And I'll start with the author of the bill, Councilwoman Williams.
I guess I'm slightly confused because I thought that we had concluded that business and that we had moved on to the next item. And if that is the case, then I would like to call for the orders of the day.
Well, we're actually on the item. There were two items for this, correct?
It is two pieces. One is a change in the code that breaks down the departments of the city, which had to be changed if you're adding a department. And then the other one has already been approved. So the department has technically been approved by the votes from the last vote. This one is just fleshing out some more questions you have on this changes to the section on departments, I'm assuming.
Right, so if this is changing the code that breaks down the departments of the city, I think this is probably the part of the conversation where we talk about what are the functions of these two departments of the city.
They are described in the piece of legislation. Anything stricken out of the current communications department would be removed. And then there is also a description of what this department would be doing. That is all within the legislation, as well as a job description was attached.
Right.
All right, I'm a little slow. Give me 1 second.
If I could, I would just
Go ahead, Councilman Williams.
Yes, I would just like to remind everyone that calling for the orders of the day is a privileged motion that doesn't need a second. And
would you speak to that? What do we do next then? All right, then let's vote.
So we need a motion and a second?
Has there been a motion and a second?
Not yet, we need a motion and a second.
All right, then I will entertain a motion and a second.
Second.
All right, let's vote.
Roll call vote to approve. Councilmember Rao?
Yes.
Councilmember Gumbs? Councilmember Willis? Councilmember Sebastian?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves?
Aye.
Councilmember Williams?
yes,
That item is approved unanimously.
All right, Mr. Clerk, please sound the next item.
Next item is item 13 on the agenda. Second read, request council approval of an ordinance amending the city charter, city clerk duties, sponsored by council members Willis, Gumbs, Sebastian, Reeves, and Williams.
All right, I will entertain a motion.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Councilman Willis. Okay, let's go ahead and call the vote then. All right, let's go ahead and call the vote.
This is a motion to move the previous question. Councilmember Rao?
Yes.
Councilmember Gumbs? Councilmember Willis? Councilmember Sebastian?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves?
Aye.
Councilmember Williams?
yes,
The motion has been called. The main motion is before you.
All right, let's call for the vote, please.
Roll call vote to approve. Councilmember Rao?
Yes.
Councilmember Gumbs? Councilmember Willis? Councilmember Sebastian?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves?
Aye.
Councilmember Williams?
yes,
That item is approved unanimously.
All right, please sound the next item.
Next item is item 14, request council approval of an emergency ordinance declaring a state of emergency in the city of South Fulton, providing for city meetings to be held virtually, providing for an effective date, and for other lawful purposes, sponsored by Councilmember Rao.
I move to approve the emergency orders declaring a state of emergency.
second,
All right, it has been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, Mr. Clerk, please call the vote. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilman Willis.
So, if we approve this, is this bill, I'm getting.
Microphone.
Normally with the, you mind if I ask,
I think that's relevant.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Can you give us an update on the COVID numbers and where we are now?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Mayor and Council and citizens. The last update I got from AFCEMA, our COVID numbers are going down. We are still seeing the new variants of Omicron, B4 and B5, which the new vaccine is out now. But we are in the low numbers, which is a good thing, which means we have hospital beds, we have ventilators, and our numbers are going down. Testing is staying steady, but our COVID numbers are going down. Flu numbers are going up, but COVID's going down.
And so can I do a friendly amendment to this? I mean, is it okay for us to, well, I think it's time, in my opinion, for us to consider going back in person. I heard from a plethora of seniors about not being able to participate like they want to in the zoning commission meetings. And I think it's time for us to make that accessible. If this ordinance is going to be put in place to, you know, have us do those zoning meetings, is there any way we can just do zoning meetings in person? Can we consider that?
The ordinance just allows us the flexibility. It's nothing precluding them from having that meeting like we're doing. It provides you the opportunity, if our numbers are fluctuating, that we can, I mean, we're meeting in person now.
And point of order, I do believe the Planning Commission is meeting in person.
Yeah,
is that correct, Mr. Hull?
Yeah, they meet tomorrow.
Okay, so they are. So this is, okay, thank you.
Right.
I just want to make sure we.
Thank you. I will say I do agree with Councilwoman Willis. However, I do just want to put it on the record. It would be, I know that we are entering flu season and that there are often COVID spikes in the winter and over holidays when people gather. I would like to set as a goal in-person meetings for everything as of February of next year. Maybe we can do it before, but I would hope that once we are through the winter and people are through the holiday gatherings, if the numbers are looking good, that we could meet that all things would be in person. But I do understand that means, Madam City Manager, you will have to find space for all of these meetings. And so I think that's something that we should plan for in future work sessions, to have a discussion about where each of our various committees will meet if we were all to begin meeting in person. And if we have that as a February date, maybe some of those committees could take the initiative to begin sort of moving in that direction.
I'm clear, Mayor. I forgot that was an issue as well. Space. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's call the vote.
So motion by Councilmember Morale, second by Councilmember Gumbs to approve. Roll call vote. Councilmember Morale?
Yes.
Councilmember Gumbs? Yes. Councilmember Willis?
Yes.
Councilmember Sebastian?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves?
Aye.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
That item is approved unanimously.
All right. Please sound at the next item.
We're on item 15, second read. Request council approval of an ordinance to amend Title I Administration, Chapter 6, Municipal Employees of the Code of Ordinances, City of South Fulton, Georgia, to add Section 16011, Temporary Employment Services and for other lawful purposes. This is sponsored by Council Members Williams, Willis, Sebastian, and Reeves.
All right. I will entertain a motion.
I move acceptance of the ordinance as sounded.
So moved. All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. I have discussion. I don't see anyone else in the queue. I would like to ask again our city manager, and do we have an HR director or an interim now that can speak to this issue?
No, I can speak to it if you need me to.
All right. My concern is, well, My global concern is this. I have been reminded repeatedly that we have a city manager form of government, and that our city manager is the chief administrator of our city. But what I am seeing in this set of ordinances is the city council organizing your job for you. And particularly in this instance, to ask for our permission as council to hire temporary employees, it just seems like we are wading further and further in to the day-to-day operations of the city, which I guess is our right, technically, by dict of the charter, but I'm not sure that that was necessarily the legislative intent. And with that, I will yield to you, Madam City Manager.
Did you have a question for me?
Is it your recommendation that we approve this ordinance? Does this help you or help our Human Resources Department operate more efficiently in your wisdom and judgment?
I mean, at times, we do have to have temporary positions within our various departments. We've done it in the past. We've had various temp agencies to assist us with that. I don't think that there is a need to have legislation for that purpose. Therefore, I mean, it's not my recommendation in regards to this particular legislation.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other.
I was in the queue.
Oh, I'm sorry, I do see people in the queue. Councilwoman Williams, are you in the queue for this item? Okay.
I was in the queue.
All right, Councilwoman Willis.
So part of our job as an elected governing body is to put processes in place when we see there's a need, and to govern, be good stewards of all of our tax dollars, because I pay taxes too. And one of the things that my colleagues and I noticed was there was an area in the city, Ms. Sally Jones, where there was an abundance of amount of money used for temp employees. And I'm going to not put all the dirty laundry out here because I feel like it's timing for everything. But this does not stop you from hiring temporary employees. What it does do is anybody in that role who wants temp employees in the city will have to bring that request to this council, and this council will vet and make sure that that request for temporary employees would not prevent what has happened. And that's what I'm going to say at this time. Thank you.
All right, seeing no one else in the queue and no hands, I will call for the vote.
Got a motion by Councilmember Williams, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Reeves to approve. Roll call vote, Councilmember Rao.
Nay.
Councilmember Gomes. Councilmember Willis.
Yes.
Councilmember Sebastian.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
That item is approved 5-1.
All right, Mr. Clerk, please sound the next item.
Next item is item 16, request council approval for the implementation of the South Fulton Police Department Incentive Pay Plan effective October 1, 2022. And employees will be eligible up to $10,000 in incentives in addition to their base salary. And this is funded from the Police Department General Fund personnel.
All right,
Yes.
Chief Meadows.
I'm sorry. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This item was developed in cooperation with the rank and file, and many of these incentives exist in police departments throughout the country where we talk about compensating people for their college degrees, compensating people for hazard duty pay, also field training officers and things of that nature. And it will also assist us in our ability to recruit better qualified people, because most people that have these skill sets, it's harder for them to take a pay cut to come into our organization without compensating them for these skills. And so it would be our hope that you all would be able to approve this item for the police department. I know that there were some comments made about it earlier. If the body feels that it's appropriate that I address them now, I'd be more than happy to do that.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So when the Smyrna report, or when the Smyrna investigation came about, that decision was made in cooperation with myself and the city manager. And my only stipulation was that everybody in that investigation be polygraphed. And when the results of that investigation came back, nearly about a month ago, myself, along with members of the Criminal Investigations Division, reached out to the Fulton County District Attorney's Office in an effort to facilitate an investigation. We spoke with the people over at the Public Corruption Division, and we initiated an investigation there.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause you here, and I don't want to get into a fight with my counsel, but I just don't think that is germane to incentive pay for education. And if we're going to hold our constituents to a standard that they can't discuss items that aren't on the agenda, I think that we should hold ourselves to the same standard that we are holding our constituents to. I think that we could talk about that at a work session. I am not opposed to having a public conversation about anything, but I do think that we need to have a conversation. I would like to hear a presentation from you about what these benefits are and what we're voting on around these benefits this evening.
I would like to overrule the decision of the chair.
The ruling of the chair, which you all may appeal at this time. Just understand that if we allow the chief to talk about it, with all of these cameras in the room, then we're all going to talk about it with all of these cameras in the room. So if you think that that is in the best interest of the city, and if our communications director and our new communications director agree that we should be doing that at this time, I think this is very, I think that this is very inappropriate. And I will now yield the floor. I do believe that there is a motion coming forth to appeal my ruling.
I move to appeal your decision with discussion.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Let's roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Rao?
Yes.
Councilmember Gumbs? Councilmember Willis?
Yes.
Councilmember Sebastian?
I am quite not sure what it was, to be honest. I wish we would have discussion on this, because I'm not sure what led to this particular discussion that the chief is having right now. I don't know what led to it.
Public comment.
Right? I'm sorry?
Public comment.
I asked to, my vote, Mayor, point of order, my vote was to appeal your decision with discussion. It was seconded, and then.
All right, so we have 3 yay votes.
So we have a discussion?
We're not actually having, I'm going to invoke our decorum ordinance and ask that our counsel wait to be recognized before talking out of turn.
Point of order,
I asked for.
My point of order needs to be recognized. I said point of order.
Councilwoman Willis.
My vote was to appeal your decision with discussion. It was seconded. And then you call for the vote. I'm not understanding why we're talking.
Councilwoman Willis is correct. I asked for discussion. There was none, and we began a roll call vote. So at this point, you can
point of order, Mayor.
I am ruling on your point of order.
Okay, because you didn't ask.
All right. as the chair, I have to make a ruling, and I can use as many or as few words as I would like in the ruling. And so I'm going to use a few more words this time because we have a new council member, and I want him to understand where we are. So your options at this time, because we are in the vote, are to vote yay, nay, abstain, or you can pass and let other people vote and we can come back.
I'm actually going to vote no. Thank you.
All right, thank
Mayor
you.
Pro Tem Reeves.
Yay, because we did not have discussion.
All right,
Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
The motion to overrule the decision of the chair was approved 5-1.
I have been overruled. Please continue. Chief Meadows.
And so during that time, we met with the district attorney's office. We initiated an audit within the police department with respect to our assets forfeiture. That audit is being conducted in cooperation with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office and our Office of Criminal Investigations. And so once that audit is complete and once the investigation is complete, at that point, the district attorney will make a charging decision as to whether or not someone should be charged in connection with those funds. The only reason I brought it up, Mayor, was because it was brought up in connection with item 16, doing public comments. And so that pretty much addresses that issue. But as far as the incentive pay, this really just puts us on par with many of the other police departments that offer these sort of incentives throughout the organization.
All right. Could you spend some time for the benefit of the audience? We all have this big book, but talking about just highlighting some of the most important parts of this package that you think would help with our recruitment or retention of officers.
Right. So, excuse me. We developed a bunch of skills within the police department. Y'all have to excuse me, my sinus is bothering me. We developed a bunch of skills within the police department, and in order to make sure that we're recruiting to our weaknesses, we wanted to make sure that we were compensating these people appropriately. And so we looked at many of the different skills and many of the different jobs throughout the police department, whether you're a detective, whether you are a SWAT member, whether you're a K-9 officer, whether you're a field training officer, whether you are an expert at drug recognition and things of those nature. We want to make sure that we're building up the organization so that we have a well-diverse skill set within the police department. And what this program does, it compensates people for first having those skills, and it also incentivizes them to go get those skills, because as it stands right now, there are some areas of weakness in the police department that we need to address, and certainly compensation goes a long way in terms of helping us to identify those people and get them appropriately trained.
All right, thank you. And this question will actually be for our Chief Financial Officer. I do see that the total here is 589,000, close to 600,000. This is coming out of savings in the police department, and we had this conversation, but I just want to confirm, have those savings not already been returned to the general fund, or will this require some budget amendment?
Well, it will go back to the general fund, so it will require, because I'm just looking through my notes, and I don't have this documented in the FY23 budget at this time.
And so these, because and again, just for the edification of the audience, we are on a federal fiscal year calendar, so our fiscal year begins Saturday, October 1st. And with our budget, any unspent items, any unspent money or any savings are returned back to the general fund. So at one point, there was money available left over in the police department's budget from FY22 that was unspent. But that money has been returned to the general fund and now has been reallocated to other places in the FY 2023 budget. So we would have to either cut something or take this money out of the reserves to fund this for FY 2023?
That's correct. And the fiscal year actually ends on Friday the 30th. So once we do all the closeout, then it will roll over into what we call fund balance.
Okay.
So into reserve funds.
So we are at this point, I think we have taken $250,000 for one of these new offices. The other one was included in the budget, the $400,000, the external affairs.
Yes, the external affairs department was already budgeted. And then
All
the
right.
position that's in the city clerk's office was budgeted as well.
All right, so we're getting close to $1 million in budget adjustments that we're going to have to make.
Yes.
And then my next question is that is the price for this year, but to fund, this is not a one-time, this isn't like our ARPA incentive. This will be an additional cost that will continue every year in perpetuity and
Yes.
would probably grow as our police department grows.
Right, and it will affect other benefits because you have to take into account Social Security, Medicare, and the retirement that they have to contribute to. So if it's added to their salaries, then yes, all of that's going to be a continuation.
So that would increase you're talking about our debt obligations for pensions and.
Mayor, I'm going to let Ms. Del Reese Brown speak.
All right, go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Delvis Brown, Administrative Manager for the for the Police Department. Our intent is to use our many vacancies that we have in our books right now to fund this incentive plan. Right now, we have almost over 70 vacancies right now. And though we are pushing to recruit and retain some officers, we do not intend on filling every single vacancy within the fiscal year. 23, not 22.
So.
It's for fiscal year 2023.
No, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that the entire 600,000 that we don't have to find it, that you're
No.
going to find some of those
Within our approved
within
budget
the
for
vacancies.
2023.
Do we know what portion?
Well, right now, I believe we have over, I think it's over 60-something police officer vacancies. That amounts to almost $3 million, and the incentive plan is only accounting for $500,000 or so of incentives for each person. We took into account everybody who is eligible for our incentives, and that's where that $500,000 number came up to. And we don't intend on spending all of our money for our vacancies.
Okay, thank you. And then, Ms. Dixon, could you explain how this might affect our pension and retirement obligations?
All right, and also I want to just make it clear, because when we budgeted for the salaries and personnel, I want to just double check my thinking with the assistant city manager that the unfilled positions, we only budgeted those at about 20%. So because we said that they weren't filled, and so they already had quite a few that are not filled, so moving into FY23, we didn't fund it 100% because they also already have those positions that are unfilled. So moving into the FY23, if they don't pay that out in this FY22, it is going to roll over into our prior year. So they're going to have to adjust their FY23 budget in order to pay this incentive. If it's paid after October the 1st.
And then I want to say I'm a little concerned. I think that we might need to just study the financial impacts a little more. But I do want to ask, and we had this same discussion when we gave out the ARPA bonuses, right? Are there any protections in the program to ensure that once people have gotten this training and we pay this money, that they would have to stay for some amount of years or pay it back?
We have training contracts. Every time someone goes to a training that the city pays for, they have to sign a training contract based on the dollar amount that they'll stay. Sometimes it's a year up to 3 years, depending on the types of trainings and the actual dollar amount associated with the training itself.
Got it. Well, that's good to know.
Hey, Mayor. Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
Madam City Manager.
If you don't mind, Chief Meadows and I have talked, and I do support the incentives. So in order for us to come back with a good, clean recommendation regarding the numbers, if we can maybe hold off on this agenda item and just bring it back next month, but if the council wants to vote in favor of it and let us work everything out, we can definitely come back with more accurate explanation regarding how we're going to fund this, but I do recommend approval.
Thank you. Well, I think before we make a decision, we should let other people talk, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up. Councilman Sebastian.
Just want to say before, Chief, thank you for presentation. Thank you. When I asked before for a discussion, I had forgotten the citizens had come in here and directed their comments at you, and to which you have a right to respond, right? I quite frankly, I didn't understand that what was happening. That's why I said I think I missed something, right? So I just want to let you know that. But in terms of the incentive, I fully support the incentive for police officers. You know, I've been fighting for this department since before there was even a government, right? So I just want to make it clear to everyone in the room that the boys in blue are my friends, and I'm a friend of the boys in blue. So don't get it twisted as to where I stand. Thank you.
And girls. Councilwoman Rowell.
This question is for Karen Slayton Dixon. I know we're in the process of going through closeout, but do you have a projected range about how much would forward to the fund balance?
Not at this time, I don't. So if you can just give us a couple of months, hopefully we'll have a better idea with that.
Second question. I just want to confirm I heard this right. Based on the savings you have right now in police, you have in excess of this $589,000, right? Okay.
All right, thank you. And then, and I will just say, since the topic has come up, the chief and I, since this unfortunate incident, have begun meeting regularly, and we did talk about this. This is not something that you're going to begin this month. You're looking at doing this at the top of the year in January,
at the first
correct?
Of the year, yes.
All right, thank you. All right, please roll call the Councilman Willis.
So, Chief Meadows, thank you for your explanation and presentation, and I hope you will do a press conference to further clarify, you know, the investigation matters. I thought it was very inappropriate for the resident to be allowed to address Chief Meadows in that way during public comments, because that was not on the agenda. Whenever you need to implement this, I'm hoping that you don't have to wait to January to implement this. It needs to be implemented. I know it hasn't been easy to recruit officers, and I know it hasn't been easy to retain officers. And I'm going to say this, in every bag of apples, there is one rotten to the core. And so we can't punish the whole police department because there was one bad apple in the bunch. I appreciate you and your leadership, and I appreciate the men and women in blue. And thank you for keeping us safe. When other cities around us are fighting to reduce crime, our crime has been steadily decreasing over the past 3 years. And so thank you all for what you do, and I move to approve this measure.
Second.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
Roll call vote to approve. Councilmember Rao?
Yes.
Councilmember Gumbs?
Yes.
Councilmember Willis?
Yes.
Councilmember Sebastian?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves?
Aye.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
That item was approved unanimously.
All right. We are at the time of our intermission, but I will just like to poll council to see if you all would like to continue moving forward.
We moving forward. Go ahead.
Okay, I've heard from two people. Councilwoman Gums? All right. For another, I heard another half an hour. I'll check in about another half an hour. Please sound the next to the public hearing. Well, let me ask, did we advertise a time for any of these public hearings that we need to adhere to?
No, we did not.
Okay,
just
perfect.
4 o'clock.
All right, thank you. Please sound that next item.
Yeah, the next item is a public hearing. It's listed as item number 17. This requests council approval of a resolution to modify the geographic boundaries of the city of South Fulton urban redevelopment area by adding Fulton Industrial Boulevard as a redevelopment area. This redevelopment area in the urban redevelopment plan will be considered URA 14, Fulton Industrial Boulevard Economic Development. And this is a public hearing.
Okay, before we open the public hearing, I would like to just get a presentation from our Economic Development Director. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you all are aware, the City of South Fulton currently has an urban redevelopment plan that was approved and executed on June 19, 2019. The URP authorizes the City of South Fulton to designate certain areas of the community as redevelopment areas. The current redevelopment area plan includes 13 project areas. Staff recommends that the Mayor and City Council authorize a resolution to modify the geographic boundaries of the City of South Fulton's urban redevelopment plan by adding Fulton Industrial Boulevard as a redevelopment area. This redevelopment area in the URP is referred to as URA 14 Fulton Industrial Boulevard. The Urban Redevelopment Authority adopted URA 14 Fulton Industrial Boulevard on August 16, 2022. Once the URP is fully amended, an application will be submitted to the Georgia Department of Community Affairs to designate a state opportunity zone that includes the most blighted parcels in the URP, the area noted in your packet. The opportunity zone will help encourage the development and redevelopment in these blighted areas. Some of those benefits that businesses will be able to capitalize off of is a $3,500 tax credit per job, new job created. That's on the state income tax. It also lowers the new job threshold from 15 jobs to 2 jobs. So an employer would only have to create a minimum of 2 jobs to get the $3,500 per job tax credit. These tax credits may be claimed for up to 5 years, as long as jobs are maintained. And also, these tax credits would be able to be utilized for up to 10 years. And it also expands the definition of eligible businesses to any legal business. Staff request on this evening, after this public hearing is completed, that Mayor and Council adopt a resolution to amend Resolution 2019-041 as updated by Resolution 2019-056 for the purpose of modifying the geographic boundaries of the City of South Fulton's urban redevelopment plan by adding South Fulton urban redevelopment plan by adding Fulton Industrial Boulevard as an urban redevelopment area. I'm here to address any questions that you might have at this time.
My first question will just go directly to Councilwoman Emeritus Gilliard's question about where the funding would come from. If you, I think, identified some new sources of funding. So is it your opinion that we would not have to change the current URA to accomplish the goals that you want for this Area 14?
No changes whatsoever. The funding for the $3,500 per job tax credit comes from the state income tax. So it would not be anything that the City of South Fulton would have to go into their coffers to actually provide.
That sounds like great news. Dr. Rao?
Clarify that it wouldn't change any of the money that remains. It stays exactly with the URAs that they were earmarked for. This creates an opportunity zone, the first one in the city.
All right. Thank you for this amazing work, Dr. Rao and Mr. Jones. Seeing no other hands and no one else in the queue, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. I will ask all those for this item to stand to my right, your left, and all of those against to stand to my left, your right. Mr. Clerk, did we have anyone register beforehand for or against?
No, we did not. Only Ms. Gilliard, who previously submitted her comment.
All right. Seeing no one rushing to line up and we have no comments, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And I will entertain a motion.
I request council approval of a resolution to modify the geographic boundaries of the city of South Fulton urban redevelopment area by adding Fulton Industrial Boulevard as a redevelopment area. The redevelopment area in the URA plan will be considered URA 14 Fulton Industrial Boulevard.
It has been properly moved and seconded. Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
Roll call vote. Councilmember Rao?
Yes.
Councilmember Gomes? Yes. Councilmember Willis?
Yes.
Councilmember Sebastian?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves?
Aye.
Councilmember Williams?
Yes.
That item is approved unanimously.
All right, Mr. Clerk, please sound the next item.
Next item is presentation, Old National Highway Corridor Livable Senators Initiative. This will be presented by the collaborative firm.
All right. I see our community development director, Mr. Hull, here. Go ahead, Mr. Hull.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just before we invite up our guests, I just want to acknowledge, as many of you know, you've participated and the community has participated in our community meetings related to the Old National LCI, Living Centers Initiative, primarily along the Old National Corridor. And as a part of updating the community, we have asked our consultants, the collaborative firm, to come before council to discuss what activities have occurred thus far, and we have a representative tonight that will make that presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Adam Ivory. I'm a senior planner with the collaborative firm. And next slide. Just to give you a quick overview of the presentation this evening, just to give you a quick update on where we're at with the overall project timeline, as well as a recap of our second community meeting, which we held earlier this month, as well as just a brief overview of the assessment and inventory analysis that we've done to date, as well as an update on the catalytic site design workshop. And then kind of a quick overview on some of the expectations with the project recommendations. Next slide. So just as a refresher, the LCI grant program incentivizes local jurisdictions to re-envision their communities through and make them into more walkable, equitable, and healthy places to live while providing improved access to jobs and services. And the city was awarded their LCI grant in December 2021. And just a reminder too, our study area boundary spans from the Old National Corridor from Sullivan Road in College Park to Woodward Road just south of Flat Shoals Road. So our team began existing conditions analysis and the public involvement process last spring.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the beginning and end of the LCI one more time?
In regards of the boundary?
Yes.
Yes. So it begins at Sullivan Road in the city of College Park, just north of I-85-285. And then it travels the length of the Old National Corridor just south of the LA Fitness Shopping Center at that Woodward Road. So that intersection just south of it.
Thank you.
So just recapping the project timeline update, we conducted our catalytic site design concept meeting over the summer, which we are currently at in the project. And then we just held our second community meeting, as previously mentioned earlier this month. And we're in the process right now of capping our stakeholder interviews. We've conducted 16 of those to date. And then we're currently working to develop our project recommendations with ultimately bringing the final plan back to council in December. Next slide. So just recapping community meeting number 2, this meeting was held at the Woods Memorial Church on September 8th. We've had over 40 people attend that meeting in person, as well as it was live streamed via the city and hosted on the city's website page. At this meeting, we received direct feedback from the community on the catalytic design concepts and the corridor's vision that we've come to hear so far. Next slide. Next slide. So as I mentioned, so up to date, we've provided an assessment and inventory analysis where we've identified the existing conditions for the corridor. Next slide. This included identifying the natural features along the corridor. That included parks and wetlands. Next slide. We identified the population and demographic for the community. We utilized the latest U.S. Census information that was just recently updated. What we did was we identified 6 census tracts that surrounded the study area. So those census tracts did include areas just outside of our study area, but it encompassed the entirety of the study area. Next slide. We identified housing and socioeconomic data, again, utilizing the census tract data. Next slide. And then we also, again, as mentioned earlier, part of the LCI program is to identify the current state and look at future planned projects for the transportation network along the study area. And so what we did was we looked at several of the existing plans that have been developed for the Old National Corridor and identified a lot of the existing conditions that were identified within those plans, as well as our own analysis. And also we wanted to incorporate incorporate and assess some of those recommendations and some of those policies that have been established for the transportation planning process to date. Next slide. And then as a part of our study process, we developed a market analysis for the study area. This market analysis, it was done by the area zip code, so the 30349 zip code, which encompassed quite a bit of the study area and surrounding areas. But we identified some of the housing rates for single family and multifamily, as well as commercial and business mix for the corridor. We also identified what the projected retail growth would be in regards to square footage for the Old National Corridor. So kind of moving on to our catalytic site design workshop. This was held August 11th at Burdette Park. It was attended by several of the business leaders and local stakeholders who provided quite a bit of feedback in regards of items such as certain properties along the corridor, or some of the history along some of the businesses, or some of those properties that have been identified in the past. The intent of the workshop was to move from analysis and visioning process to the design process. At the workshop, our project team received direct feedback from these community stakeholders that did attend the meeting, and the project team identified several catalytic sites where we identified the land use characteristics of those sites, development types, and style for each site. We also look to integrate the different land uses, incorporate some of the market analysis, and the transportation into these site designs as well. So the 4 catalytic sites that we identified was Tri-County Station at the 138 Old National, and that is outside of our study area, but based upon the feedback that we've heard at some of the community events, as in regards to some of our core committee and key stakeholder meetings, there was a large consensus that we identified that key critical site to our study area, at least for the catalytic site. The second site was the Pleasant Hill Burdette Node along Old National. The third was LA Fitness Shopping Center. And then the fourth was kind of that northern gateway as you travel from College Park into the city of South Fulton, close by to where the planned South Lake BRT route will go from MARTA. Next slide. So for transportation improvements, what we were looking to identify as a part of the catalytic site design process was to identify improvements that would enhance access management along Old National, as well as promoting parallel connectivity to the Old National corridor, utilizing adjacent access roads. And then also we look for opportunities to add additional safe pedestrian crossings across Old National, as well as the final thing, the objective was identifying enhanced transit and shelters along the corridor. So, as it was mentioned earlier, we've tried to engage the community at different levels. Whether it was, we've had over 300 public surveys that have been filled out to date, and that count was just from a couple weeks ago, so prior to our second community meeting. We've conducted over 16 stakeholder interviews, which included city staff and other key community stakeholders along the way. But we really wanted to canvass the different levels of community in regards of engagement throughout that process. To date, we've conducted 3 core committee meetings, which is our primary stakeholder group, which is made up of 8 to 10 community stakeholders. We've conducted 2 community meetings, one in June and the prior one I mentioned in September. But we've also tried to target different community events along the way just to engage people, to make them aware of the study, as well as answer any questions at these events that we could from community stakeholders. Some of the events that we've attended, Senior Health Fair, the Friday food truck events, LCI Visioning Tour, and then we've also been coordinating with the Old National Merchants Association as well as the Old National District.
I'm sorry, before you go to that next slide, is that comprehensive, or are those all of the events that you have attended?
No, we've attended other events.
Okay.
I know I was given a time limit, so I wanted to keep it going. And then our last community meeting is going to be held Thursday, October 27th at 6 p.m. This is going to be held at Woods Memorial Church again. And at this meeting, we'll go over the 5-year implementation recommendations, as well as the 100-day action plan. And the 100-day action plan is intended to ignite those 5-year implementation projects and policies. And it will go into effect as soon as the plan is adopted by y'all. So it's intended to be really the items that essentially ignite and get those the implementation process started on those recommendations. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you guys may have tonight.
All right. I don't see any questions. I do want to start with our district representatives. Do either Councilman Williams or Councilman Reeves have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I think that the collaborative firm has been very thorough in reaching out to the community as well as in keeping me informed, and I do very greatly appreciate the efforts that they have made to ensure that I am kept abreast of what they're doing. And I think that they have done a very, very good job of incorporating the feedback that they've been getting from the community and making sure that they are listening to what the residents on the corridor really want to see happen. So they've done, I think, a very, very good job and are to be commended for the work that they've done thus far. And I certainly am looking forward to the end result when we can move into discussing how we're going to fund all of these wonderful ideas.
Councilman Reese?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, and I want to second the sentiments of my colleague, Councilmember Williams. Y'all have done a fine job. I had a meeting last night at Burdett, and they mentioned what would Old National look like and what is the plan of developments around Old National. And I says, well, that you asked that is that, you know, the engagement has been good, but at the same time, we would like more engagement. And the people who asked those questions, I don't think have been a part of the process. So I encourage them, encourage all the constituents who care and love about Old National and want to see it change and want to see a difference. This is the time to have your input as to participate in this process. And thank you all, and thanks to the collaborative firm for doing such a fine job.
I do want to take this moment to recognize that entering the room now is the incomparable Mr. Michael Hightower, who is the founder of the collaborative firm. You're never going to get to make a quiet entrance, sir. Awesome.
And not just the founder of the collaborative firm, but for many years, the commissioner for this area prior to Bill Edwards. And so certainly thank him for his diligence. I know his love for Old National and the Old National Corridor, so thank you.
All right, so I have a few questions. I'm going to probably ask you to go through your slides. Okay. And you had a slide about the density on Old National, and I don't know if you know this in comparison to the rest of our city, but is that the most densely populated area in our city?
We did not do analysis for the rest of the city. We just focused on these 6 census tracts in the study area.
I do believe that it is, but it's always good to have, you know, this data. Why you had one of the catalytic site developments in at 138 at that center. We have in the past couple of months heard many requests to develop that area, and right at about Woodward Avenue south to Woodward Road south to 138, most of that land is zoned agricultural, fronting Old National, but our future land use pretends something different. Why, there was some conversation about extending the boundary down. Why haven't we done that? What would we need to do that?
So initially we were following the previous LCI study boundary, and we actually kind of, we brought it a little bit closer to the corridor because we wanted to focus on those commercially developed parcels along Old National, which is why we stopped at Woodward Road, because again, as you had mentioned, as you travel further south, it changes the character area along the corridor. And so that's that first part in regards to the study area boundary. The site at the 138 and Old National, so one of the engagement activities that we held at the first community meeting was we solicited input from the community about catalytic site locations. And that was one that garnered a lot of attention on the board. And so, again, working with the city planning staff, we wanted to make sure that we were, looking at the entirety of the corridor. And so we included that location in regards of the catalytic site design.
Awesome. The market analysis, that target area was much larger than the LCI. We're actually sitting in 30349 now, which extends all the way up into District 2. Is there some reason you went with the zip code versus just the census tracts for that market analysis?
Actually, the person that conducted the market analysis, Al Lane, he's here right now. I'll let him speak upon that.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor.
Yes, but the mic would probably help the people watching online.
Thank you. When we did the market analysis, as you well know, when you do a market analysis, you try to look at the market in which the area that we're looking at. And certainly the study area, the Old National, the boundaries of the study area that we looked at are captured in the 30349. And that helps us look at things like housing conditions, also housing demand. And I noticed if you looked at some of the data, you see the issue with the single-family housing. You look at multifamily housing. And the primary reason, Mayor, that we did that is because we wanted to capture within the market where the housing conditions were taking place, and the fact that the study area is included in that particular zip code, it gave us an opportunity to look at the data in the zip code overall. And we know that in many cases, zip codes as well as census tracts overlap into other jurisdictions. So
Yes, thank you. I want to take a moment. I know that we're going to have a feedback session tomorrow night. I'm sorry, not tomorrow night. We're going to have a feedback session October 27th. One of the one of the things that I did not see on there was Old Nat Day. I do want to just take a moment to note Mr. Torrey Tomlinson has done a lot of work organizing people under 50 on Old National who don't normally turn out to these kinds of events. There will be a business roundtable tomorrow night on Old National. I'll make sure that you know about that. You'll be there, yeah. And there'll be I think that there will be a gathering of young people there that would be good to hear from. I want to give a special thanks to Woods Memorial, who, even though they are experiencing a rash of break-ins, even now, they continue to open their doors to community events such as these. Some of the camera footage from Woods Memorial shows that the people that are breaking in repeatedly are walking to Woods Memorial and walking away with things from my neighborhood, Camelot. Is Camelot part of the development node for Burdette? Let me just ask that question first. I think that was the closest development node that was mentioned.
Yes, it's right across the street from where that development node is. But that development node focuses on the interaction between both sides of Old National, creating safe crossings of the corridor. So.
Okay, I will just urge the study committee to really take a look at those. Camelot is 40 acres with a lake. And it has been the source of a lot of criminal activity to which our chief can attest, and it is dragging the property values down for everyone around it. It could be a truly catalytic site development. And so I do just want, to urge people to consider that. And then lastly, as we are, whether it becomes a part of the LCI or not, because people are in a rush to develop these blank slates of agriculturally zoned parcels, I think it's important that we just are always in conversation so that we don't have one part of Old National looking dramatically different than those areas that are outside, both in terms of just the visual styling in the overlay district, as well as the approach to density. In our next work session and in future meetings, we're going to be talking about the areas of the city that we might designate as urban, suburban, rural, and industrial, because right now without that plan, developers are just deciding what they want to do. So I just wanted to give those notes. Go ahead, Mr. Hightower.
Let me first thank Adam for doing a tremendous job, Adam Ivory, for this study. And I'll be very brief. I know you have a long agenda. A couple of things, and I said, many of you have worked on the LCIs before in your life. I know Carmelita Gomes has worked on some in her prior life. I'm not sure where she worked before, but she has worked on some before. And but also I want to thank Council Members Williams and Reeves for their active involvement in this study. A couple of things. One of the things, many of you know T. Dallas Smith, the commercial real estate. He's one of our consultants on the team, and Adam and myself and Al Lane, we have asked him to be involved to help us and the city of South Fulton go to another level. LCIs, and I know, Catherine, you've been involved in your life at the city of Atlanta. They are only as good as we have private investment for the future. Studies can be studies, but private investment, LCIs throughout this region have been successful because of private, including public investment. So we have asked Dallas Smith, and Adam mentioned I was listening as I was coming down the Developers Roundtable, but also the Developers Day. Dallas Smith has agreed. He's a local born and raised in College Park, South Fulton. He has agreed to assemble a list of potential brokers for the corridor. And not only get in front of him, but he's also, in part of his company is the largest African-American commercial real estate company in the country, in South Fulton. So they're going to be assisting us and the city of South Fulton with having some active brokerage opportunities for redevelopment. And that's not part of this current study. We've had some discussion with your Mr. Hull and his staff about that, and Marissa. That's going to be the next step, whether we're here or not after the LCI. The real issue is not this 6-month study. The real issue is what do we do after this study? And so I want to just indulge you and your members of council, Council Members Reeves and Williams and yourself as the mayor, to think about what's after the study. And I think that would be the success of this corridor. So again, that's going to be a part of Adam mentioned a 100-day plan. We're going to mention some very specific recommendations, including this brokerage piece that's going to look at real estate from Godby Road in the city of College Park, the old Target site, down to 138. But the bulk of that would be in the city of South Fulton, having a brokerage day for the city of South Fulton. So these are things that we're going to recommend. It'll be out of our control after the study's over, but for the city to look at for first quarter 23. And T. Dallas has agreed to lead that effort, first of a kind in this region. So I wanted to add that as well.
Seeing no other questions or comments. Okay, go ahead, Councilman Willis.
Thank you for your presentation. Ms. Sarah Jones, Mr. Hightower did mention that what's important is what we do with these studies. In 2020, there was a CDAP study done on a corridor in this city in Washington Road. And as we go down this road for LCI, we need to take a comprehensive approach at all of these studies and make sure that they are funded. That was a $50,000 grant from ARC. That study was done. I've sent it over to Mr. Hull and your office. Mr. Hull, this was the first time I sent it to you, but I sent it to your office every time we had a director. And no recommendation has come back on how we implement those that study that was done. And so we need to make sure, as Mr. Hightower stated, that none of these studies sit on a shelf. Thank you.
All right, thank you, and thank you, the collaborative firm. Let's hear the next item.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, I'm going to check in because now we're about to head into the portion of the meeting that is the hearings. Are we ready for a 10, 15-minute intermission? Councilwoman Williams?
Yes, I was going to move that we take a 15-minute recess.
All right, well, we have a motion on the floor. It's been properly moved and seconded for a 15-minute recess. Mr. Clerk, please call the vote.
Roll call vote, Councilmember Rao,
Yes.
Councilmember Gomes, Councilmember Willis,
Yes.
Councilmember Sebastian,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves, Councilmember Williams.
Yes.
We are recessed at 6:24 p.m.
I will see you all at 6:40.